Have you seen the movie Inception? Well, it's a very nice movie featuring Leonardo DiCaprio, released in 2010. And it has this nice concept of a dream within a dream, and then a dream within it, and then a dream within it. So, multiple levels of dreams. And obviously, this is related to dream science and psychology. But now, recursion in programming is a similar concept. So, recursion is basically when you have a function and you actually call the same function within that function, and you keep calling it until some exit condition is met. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I improved upon the YouTube nested sidebar that I created in my previous series of videos, and how I added multi-level nesting to it, all by using the power of an Angular recursive components. Now, watch till the end the whole video, because this is a very nice tool to have in your toolbox when you're creating Angular apps, as it really makes your code clean and allows you to add flexibility which you cannot add in any other way. Okay, so let's start by what is recursion actually. So I created just a small diagram here to explain to you what recursion is. So you have this function here. This is one function. So we are calling the same function with different parameters, and we're calling it again and again and again. But you would say that this would result in an infinite loop because we're calling the same function again. But the trick is in recursion to get it right is that you need to have, at some level, you need to have an exit condition. And this condition checks if that parameter, which is changing in each execution of the function, is reached some point. And when it reaches that point, the function is not called again. So in this case, for example, we have 4 parameters. Now the fifth parameter fulfills the condition and it sort of ends the loop. So this ensures that recursion works properly and it stops when it needs to. Otherwise, it's going to result in an infinite loop. So this is just something that you have to be careful in when you are using recursion in your code, in your JavaScript code or in Angular in your components. So, but let me tell you a bit of a background of how I reached here. So I got a comment here on my YouTube sidebar tutorial here on YouTube by Ian here. He said that he had bought the full project, and he wanted to add a third level to the menu. Two isn't enough. Currently, the sidebar only allows one level. You could say that two levels of the sub items here. But he wanted a third level as well here, as you can see in the comments. So this got me thinking. I replied to him that, okay, I'm going to look at the code, and I mentioned recursion just, fleetingly, to because it sort of intuitively looked like recursion would be a good answer to it. But I said that, okay, I'll look at the code and I'll get back to you. And so that's just what I did. And I looked at the code. And if I looked at the code here, for example, this is my menu item component, which I use to represent a single menu item, the top level menu item. And if I look at the code here, okay, we have looping within the sub items of the item. So if there are sub items within the item, I loop through them. And this is the second level, which is the sub items within a main menu item. So what if I want to have a third level, as Ian suggested, or he needed for his app? So what would we actually do? If I did it in the same pattern, what I would do is for each of the loop entries here, I would have to add another for condition here, and I would need to loop through the sub item here. So let's call this a SS sub item. So that's another problem. And we are going to loop through the sub item dot sub items. So it could be a sub item of the sub item. And then we would need to just copy this whole code again. And we are going to add all of the other functionality, for example, the indentation, and for example, the animation, and also the nested item open functionality. Now, in this case, the nested item open is only handled for the top level. Now we'll also have to add a nested sub item open here so that it can control the sub item open there. So all in all, this is going to make our template really large. And as we keep adding levels to it, the nested sidebar, we are going to add more code to the template, and it's going to keep making it unmanageable. All right. So then I thought that maybe there is a better way. And so for the better way, I looked at the structure of the menu item itself. And I got a hint from there. And I'm going to go to the custom side nav component, where I have the object of the menu items, and I also have the type of the menu items at the top here. So if I look at type of the menu items here, I can see that I have sub items, and they are basically an array of the same menu item. So you can already see some form of recursion here, because the sub items are an array of the same type itself. So why can't we keep the menu item component also as a sub item? So this got me thinking that maybe recursion seems to be the perfect use case for this. I wanted to try this out, the concept of recursive angular component. Okay, so a recursive angular component is something which seems to be a bit hard to understand, but it is basically when you are using the same component within itself. Okay, so in our case, we have the menu item component. Now, what if we can remove in the sub items, we can remove all of this code and just replace it with the menu item itself. So can we do that? Well, let's try out. And so the first thing then we need to do is that we need to comment this thing out, and we are going to just use our app menu item here. And you can see our app menu item. And of course, the app menu item has some inputs that we need to specify. You remember that I mentioned that the parameters for the recursive nested sort of code function or the component is really necessary, because we need to send in a different parameter. Otherwise, it's not going to stop the recursive process. So the first one is the item input. So we need to know the item. Now, in this case, the item is going to be our sub item here. And it so happens that in our type, the sub item is also a menu item. So we are not going to have any issue with TypeScript complaining about the type of the item here, because a sub item is already in a menu item itself. Okay. The second parameter is the collapse parameter, which is basically the global parameter of the side nav being collapsed or not. So we're just going to pass it as it is, because we just need the value for it. So we're just going to pass this signal as it is, and it's going to go into all of the nested menu item components within it. All right. Okay. So this seems to be fine. Now, how do we test this out? So let's save this and let's go to your Angular YouTube sidebar here. Let's refresh this, and you can see that, okay, our main one level of nesting works. But the moment of truth, we need to check if our multiple nested works as well without doing anything else. So how do we check that? Okay, so let's add two more sub items to one of the menu items. And let's add this to, for example, we assume that we have our videos. And within that, we say that, okay, we need a sub item within the videos as well. And for the sub items, we are going to give another array here. Yeah, so the first one is going to have an icon of movie, and this is going to have a label of shorts representing the shorts movie format, and then the root is going to be shorts as well. All right, similarly, the second subroot that we want here will have an icon of TV, and we are going to say that it's a long form videos, and the root is going to be long form as well. Okay, so we have added sub items. Now we also need to add two components to it. So let's add a component ngGC, and we are going to add these components to our pages, but within the content and video section here, because it is a sub page for that. So we're going to do pages, content, and videos, and then we're going to add shorts, grids. This is one component, and for the other one, we're going to specify long form. All right, so we got two new components here, which are sub of the videos, and then we're going to go in our roots file, and in the videos, we are going to specify our children here. So I know this is the longest process, but in the end, I'm also going to improve this a bit in the final version. So watch till the end. All right. And in this one, so we are going to have the path as shorts and the component as shorts component. And then in this one, we are going to have the path as long form, and then the component as long form component. All right. So we have two components added, and then two components linked in the roots as the children of the videos. And let's see whether the sub items work. Okay. And now when we refresh this, we are going to see that we have content, and then within the videos, we have another sub items. And even though there are some issues, but visually the menu works fine. We did not need to add any extra code for this, because the recursive process handles this pretty nicely. All it is, this is all we needed for visually showing the menu item at any level. Okay, now we can keep adding levels, and it's going to show, because this is exactly the power of recursion that we are using now. All right, why aren't there any infinite loops? Because we are calling the menu item within a menu item as well. So why isn't it calling it continuously? And the secret to that is that we're using the exit condition. Now the exit condition is this condition. So if an item has sub items, only then for each sub item we are going to have a menu item. So the last item does not have the sub items, and that means that it's going to stop the execution, and it's not going to show the menu item for the last item. So the execution stops and the recursion does not get stuck in an infinite loop. Okay, but still there are two problems. So the first problem, you can see that when you click on it, it doesn't go to the roots properly. Now that is because we actually don't have the correct root here. So for each of the menu item, we are just linking to the item.root. And it's not really considering the hierarchy of the roots. So this needs to be fixed. And the second thing is that you'll see that it uses the nice nesting that you see here. There is no nesting here. You can see there's no nesting in the nest menu here. And so this visually does not look as nice as we would want it to be. So let's fix these two problems one by one. Okay, so the first problem, as I said, was that the roots don't work. And that is because our menu item does not consider the hierarchy of the roots and it only uses the current root. So in this case, we need to maintain some sort of history of the root so that the current menu item can use that to actually navigate to the correct router link. All right, so how do we do that? So it's really easy to do. Now we just need to add another input here, and let's add an input here. Let's call this route history. Okay, so this is going to be an input and the initial value is going to be empty. So the first root is going to have an empty value. All right, so this route history is then going to be used for specifying the router link. And so the first thing we need to do is for the main menu item, we are then going to do route history. That means it needs to consider the previous route history, plus it needs to add up the forward slash, and then it needs to add the current root for it. All right. And then another thing, for the sub items, we need to do something else. And for the sub item, we need to send in the root history, the current root history. So how do we do that? Let's see, we add root history here. And in this root history, we are going to specify our previous root history. And we are also going to add up with a slash our current item dot root. All right. So this is going to be the root history for the nested sub item basically, so that it can then calculate its own nested sub items, etc., etc. All right. So let's log this and see whether this works fine. We can actually do log roots and we can use an effect, which is a real nice thing in signals. We can do console.log. We can do this dot. So whenever the route history changes, it's going to show up on our console so that we can test it out properly. Okay, so now when we test this out, and let's open up our console here. Let's open up our console here, refresh it. And now the first one, you can see that there are 4 console logs with an empty. That means this is the initial route history. Now when we open up our sub item, you're going to see that we see slash content, which is fine. And we see 3 of them because there are 3 sub items to content. And then we have our videos. When we go in our videos, you can see that it has content slash videos. And you can also see that we are now navigating to the sub item roots fine. And if we go even further for the shorts one, you can see that it is navigating to the shorts one fine as well. It's highlighting the active root as well. So this works okay. Now, of course, you can see here that it doesn't show anything on our component here because we didn't add the router outlet to our videos component here. So the videos page needs to have a router outlet so that it can show its child components there. So let's quickly add that and let's go to our videos component, and here we can include the router outlet, and instead of videos works, we can say that, okay, we have router outlet here, and let's see whether this works now. And you can see now content, videos, nothing happens because we don't have anything. And then when we go in the shorts, it says the short works and then long form works. Okay. So routing works and our component linking with these roots is also working. Great. So now the second problem. The second problem is indentation. How do we add indentation to our sub items here? So if you remember, for the indentation, what we did was previously is that we added a class, and this class basically set the design token for the icon start space of that menu item. So if you want more about design tokens, I have a video which I discussed these changes in Material 3, in Angular Material 3, and how it helps us to customize. But here I'm using this specific design token and I'm overriding its value to create that nested effect at the first level of the nested sidebar item. But what we want here is that we want this to be according to the nesting itself. So for the first one, we want a bit of nesting. And for the second one, we want a bit more of nesting. And for the third one, for example, we want a bit more of nesting. So how do we create this dynamic behavior? Now, to do this dynamic behavior, we need the level of the sub items that we have. So for this content, we would need to have this level as 0, and this would mean that we don't have any extra indent added. And for this level, this could be 1. So that for this, we would have the first level, and we could multiply it by some specific value to get that specific indentation. And then at this level, this would be the level 2, so that we could multiply it by the same amount and have a bit more indentation. So that is the general thing that we need to follow. Now, how do we do that? Now, we could create an input in our menu item, just like we did for route history, and we can keep incrementing this in sort of the sub items. But there is a better way, because the route history basically contains our levels by itself, and we can derive it from there. So all we need to do is we need to have a computed here. So let's create a level computed in our menu component, and let's do computed. And all we need to do here is that we can do route history dot split, and let's split this on the forward slash, which means that how many levels of route it will have. So how many levels of nesting it has. And then we can just use the length of the array that we get in this. So the more the segments are, the more the length will be of this array. Okay. So let's test this out and see whether this works fine. And let's, along with the route history, we also want to now do the level here like this. Okay, so let's see whether this works and we get the level as we want. So let's see the first level, if you can refresh it. So the first level, you can see that it is 1. Now, so this is a problem, because the first level we want it to be 0, because we don't want to add any extra indentation. So what we are going to do is that we're going to do -1 here, so that the first level we get is 0. So now we get the first value as 0, as you can see here. And when we open up the sub items, the first level we get 1, and the second level we get 2. Okay, this is exactly what we need. All right, now let's add another computed, which is computed from this level computed. So what we're going to do is we are going to call this indentation, and we are going to use this set the style. So what we need to set the style here is that we need to do an initial 16 pixels, which is the default, and we're going to add to it, we're going to use the level that we got, and we're going to multiply it this by another 16 pixels. Okay, and the value that we get here, then we are going to convert it into a string. So let's convert this into a string literal here like this, and then just add pixel at the end. All right, so this is my indentation. Now currently, if you can see, I have a class called indented, which is added here. Now I'm going to remove that class, because I want to add a custom value or a dynamic value to this style value. So we're going to use the style binding in the Angular template itself instead of this class. All right. So we're going to cut this here, remove the indented here. Let's also remove our previous menu item here, because we don't actually need it. And so in our current item, what we're going to do is that we're going to add a style binding here, style dot, and we're going to specify the design token that we want to change, and just assign the indent signal to it. Great. And that's just about it. Let's see whether this works or not. So now when we test it out here, this is the 0th level. You can see that there's no extra indentation here. When we open this up, you can see there is some indentation, because it is 16 into 1 plus 16, which is 32 pixels. So this is 32 pixel indentation. And you can adjust it according to your own taste. So you can add it, you can add more to it, you can reduce more to it according to the nesting that you want. And then when we open up another level, you can see that we have this 2 and we multiply it by 16. So 2, 16, 32. When you add it to 16, and you can get more indentation in the, and then if you keep adding more levels to it, you're going to get this indentation automatically. Okay. So this is fine. But one thing that we missed here, if we collapse this, you can see the indentation remains. Now we need to add a condition for the collapsed as well, so that the indentation does not apply when the collapse state is active. So with the power of signals, what we need to do here is we can just use this collapse signal within this computed, and we can do something like this. So we can do, if this is collapsed, then we can give 16 pixels, which is the default. And if it's not collapsed, then we can use a normal indentation that we would like. All right, let's test this out. And now you can see that the indentation works normally, but in the collapse state, the indentation gets removed and it nicely tucks in on the left side. Okay, so great. The indentation issue is resolved. Okay, so our multi-level nested sidebar looks quite good. And we can remove the nesting. We can add more nesting to it as we please by using the power of recursion. But I got a bit carried away as well, and wanted to make it a bit more flexible for the users of this sidebar or the developers working on this sidebar so that it becomes easier for you to add more pages. So I did a few more changes. I'm just going to go over them quickly so that you can know how I did those changes. So the first thing I did was that I extracted out the menu item type and the menu items array or the object that we have representing our sidebar outside of the code of the menu item and the side nav component and into its own file here, menu item.ts. And this I did so that I could make the menu items reusable. I'm using the menu items in the component as well, and I wanted to use these menu items themselves to actually generate the routes dynamically as well. To generate the routes dynamically, though, there was just one thing missing, and that was the component or the page that is linked to that specific route. So that I have added to the menu item type here, and I've also added in my menu items themselves. So you can see that the component dashboard component, content component, and all of the other components are specified in my menu items object itself. Now the benefit of this is that then the routes file is really small. And here also I'm using the power of recursion. So you can see that I've just kept one route. I want to keep this manual because this is something differing from app to app. I don't know what the default route for your app can be, but you can change it to any route that you would like. But for the rest of the routes, they are all going to be dynamically generated using the menu items file. So you can see the menu items are being imported from here. And then I map them to an item to root function, which I created. Now this function is also a recursive function. If I show you here, so this takes in a menu item and this calls the same function within it as well for all of the sub items. So you can see that it creates a route with the path that we've given in the menu item and the component that we specify in the menu item. And then if it has sub items, it creates the children of the route themselves and it maps the sub items to the item.root. So if there are sub items within this sub items, then it's going to call this same function again and it's gonna keep calling them till the children are on their last leg. So it's going to create that nice hierarchy that we had to create manually before. All right. So this makes it really flexible. Now, what does this mean? This means that all you have to do now, all the developer has to do is you just need to create the component for the page that you would like by using the Angular CLI or doing it yourself. And then you can just add the component to the menu item itself. You can specify the root, the icon and everything, the nesting level of it, and it is going to automatically generate the routes file for you. And it's also automatically going to generate the sidebar for you. So both of these things are now going to be automatically generated at any level of nesting that you require. So just to test this out, you can see that, for example, we can add another nested level here. I would like to add maybe another nested level here. Let's say I just copy this place circle thing again and I just use the same videos component. So let's make it into an object and let's see whether this works as we want it to. So this is all that we need now to add a page to our sidebar project here. So let's see if we click on content here and videos, and within shorts, you can see there's another and then videos, and then you can see the videos route works fine as well. And the videos component should show here if there is a router outlet in this shorts component as well. So just a caveat, that is just another thing that you need to do, but we can do it manually ourselves. All right. Okay. So you can see now there are 3 levels of nesting and it all works really fine, all by simply adding an item to the sub items array. All right. So these are some great improvements to the nested sidebar. You can add virtually any level of nesting now. And along with it, the routes are also going to be generated automatically. And also this fulfills the request which started from Ian requesting about the 3rd level of the nested sidebar. And he will get the 3rd level and more if he needs it. All right. So thanks to him for prompting these changes, because otherwise I would not have created this video and I would not have updated this sidebar to include more of these flexible changes. Okay, so if you'd like to get this code, there's a link in the description where you can get the updated code for this along with all of these new features. Now, if you have already purchased this before from a BMC shop, I have a gift for you and I'm going to be emailing you this updated code, this updated version with multi-level nesting on the email that you provided when making that purchase on the BMC page. And so this is going to be my free gift to you after this video. All right, so thanks for watching. If you like this video, as always, please like and subscribe to my channel so that more people can benefit from this and we can all learn the power of recursion together. Okay, and till next time, I'm going to see you with another great video.